Okay, so we're live now. Hey, I'm Caleb Owens with the Insurance Experience, and today I'm with Chris Gutierrez. How are you today, Chris?
I'm doing great. I'm in sunny California, so it's fall now, and yeah, trying to stay warm in the nighttime and trying to stay cool during the daytime. It's California, so the weather is like all over the place.
Well, we're seeing crazy weather all over the world right now. Things seem to
Totally.
be really bizarre everywhere you go. I mean, that
Yeah,
sounds pretty nice, and way at least the way you make it sound in Southern California, that
yeah,
sounds like a dream.
yeah, yeah. Sometimes, mine is the inflation, but everything else
Oh,
is good.
right. That's going on all over the country right now.
Yeah,
We're seeing that
yeah,
everywhere. There's just craziness. I'm sure a lot of people are really hurting really bad. With inflation, you hear this a lot. I honestly think it's probably a good thing with all these strikes. It's kind of like they're just kicking back, saying, "Look, enough is enough. We're starting to fight
yeah.
back."
Yeah, you know what? I mean, it obviously, has kind of pros and cons just like anything,
Sure.
and I feel like some of that inflation, bleeds in a little bit until the insurance segment as well.
Yeah.
You see big companies like Farmers, and other ones like pulling out of Florida and some other ones, pulling out of certain markets, like we're not going to underwrite anymore, like property insurance.
Hmm.
So yeah, definitely a lot of changes and that always opens kind of the window for newer companies coming up and trying to make a breakthrough in the industry. So I'm curious to see, within the next like 3, 4, 5 years, uh, what that market's going to look like, because there's definitely a lot of changes going on right now.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. You kind of touched upon my area is the property side because especially the property insurance, and it's just you're right. It's getting squeezed all the way around. It's kind of like no one is immune from it, all the way from companies all the way down to individuals. They're getting squeezed as well.
Yeah,
Especially on the property side, the cost of everything is going up. I've heard a lot about California. The cost is going up as well. Like with whenever they go to there to repair the properties, they
yeah,
had anticipated it was going to cost X number of dollars, and now you're looking at 30 or 40% more just to repair it back the same way. Nothing extra included, just the same exact methods. And it's like you're looking at 30 to 40% increase over what they were estimating it would cost. And so those
yeah.
costs have to go somewhere, don't they? So it's like, you
I'm
know,
sure the 30-40% increase is because of the California way, right? That's the probably they're probably
yeah,
gonna advertise like, yeah, we're gonna repair a roof, but we're adding the California way of repairing it, and that's the excess 40%. Yeah, no, it's insane. It's kind of like gas. It's up and so it's just overall, but
yeah,
interesting to see all those changes.
yeah, definitely. So tell me more about yourself. I want to know more about you. And like, if you don't mind, give me a walkthrough, like where you came from and how you came up.
Sure, sure. Yeah. So Chris Gutierrez, I'm the CEO of Strike National Investigations. I founded the company as well.
Wow.
And I'm also the founder of the National Education Institute of Investigations. My background is a little bit of combination of law enforcement and primarily SIU. So I it jokingly, but not. I say I started my career when I was 12 because I actually did. I at 12 I used to join. I joined the cadet program with my local police department, and
Wow.
every day after school, I would go and kind of volunteer at the cadet program. And we had like weekly training, and then I would go on ride-alongs with police officers and kind of do community service hours that way, and learn a lot of things. So I did that since I was 12, and then at the age of, I think I was like 15 and a half or 16, I had this opportunity to work as a decoy with the Drug Enforcement Agents
Really?
Administration, so DEA, and it was for like about a year. Nothing too crazy, it wasn't like an episode of Narcos or anything
Right,
like
right.
that. This was more like yeah, liquor stores
Oh,
and other type of facilities that were selling like alcohol to underage people,
okay.
tobacco, and that they knew that they were selling like marijuana back when it was illegal still in
Hmm.
California. Um, and all that stuff. So yeah, I was going and kind of doing this, like small little operations. I would go in there, make some purchases, and then as soon as the purchase was done, then after they'll
Wow.
come in and cite the location. Sometimes they'll shut them down, and I wouldn't really get pay other than like have a nice dinner, because
Really?
this was an internship. So this
Okay.
was this it wasn't like I was promised something. No, this was more
Yeah.
like just to kind of get the experience, get out there. So it was cool, and not a lot of people kind of get that opportunity, especially when you're like 16.
Yeah.
um and then yeah, at 18 I got hired with my local police department as a police dispatcher.
Wow.
So I started working there. Then kind of it's a small department. It's like a 2 square mile city. It's a city of Bell in LA. So it's a small city, and I started working there. Then kind of started working different departments, because being a smaller department, you kind of can do a lot of lateral work within there. So I kind of learned the records department side of
Wow.
things. Then then after. I really always loved the detective bureau, and I wanted to just be there. If it was just even doing paperwork, that's all I wanted to do. So I found my way in there, and it wasn't as a detective, because I was still young, and it was just helping, detectives, and I'll be the one to carry all those big, case files to the DA's office and file them, and sit there with the DA while the DA is kind of reviewing the case files, and they have questions on the case. So that was cool. And then after that, kind of went through the academy, and did about like a year and a half in patrol. And then I kind of went to the private side from there. Um, and yeah, it was kind of like a firm in Irvine, California, doing claims investigation of like primarily like workers' comp claims.
Hmm.
And then from there, I would always hear from everybody that SIU, standing for Special Investigations Unit, with insurance companies, that they were the elite of the elite when it came to insurance fraud. So I was like, well, that's sounds like that's where I need to be. And at the time, I think I was probably like 22 and a half or so. And yeah, I applied to various companies, and I started working for a large auto insurance carrier. They're probably like the largest or second largest in the nation.
Wow.
And I was the youngest SIU investigator in the country for that
Wow.
company. And yeah, so from there, just kind of, got the experience working in SIU, heavily in claims every single day, auto, personal, commercial. Started kind of getting involved in other lines of insurance too, general liability, property claims. Eventually, I transferred to Liberty Mutual Insurance, also in SIU. So that's where I was doing more of the property type of losses, warehouse fires, big property fires, those things like that, workers' comp as well. And then yeah, eventually I got my license as a PI, as a private investigator, and I started my own
Wow.
company. And here we are, about like 3 years later. So
Man,
it's
you
been
make it
fun.
sound so easy. That's really cool. What made, if you
No,
don't mind,
yeah.
like what made you like quit? I mean, you were going the route, if I'm not correct, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but you were going the route of being like a detective and kind of working your way up in the police force. What made you kind of like go towards the private side?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. Um, you know, it was a combination of multiple things. I think over the last several years, the police force countrywide has gone through, multiple changes
Oh,
and
right, yeah,
challenges as well.
sure.
And at the time, I think it was barely like the tip of the iceberg. When I moved out, I didn't get to experience too much of the changes that came after.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
But one of the main contributors, luckily, was my wife. At the
Oh,
time, it was kind of like, hey, you either choose law enforcement career or you choose me, and it's like, well,
okay.
I turned in my resignation the next day, to the boss. Um,
Okay, so she helped guide you away. That was
she
smart.
yeah, she guided me away, and for good reasons. I was landing in the ER too many times.
Wow.
This is I was working a Skid Road area in LA.
Oh
And
yeah, I know that area.
if
Yeah,
it, yeah, if you ever heard of that area, I
of
mean,
course.
working 1 year there is probably equivalent to like working 4 years somewhere else.
Yeah.
You see a lot
Wow.
of things, and that's like every day, nonstop. The minute you get in your, your patrol cruiser, it is call after call after call, and it's just anything from bomb threats to assault with deadly weapon to
Wow.
187 suspect, murder, to somebody just got shot in the face and you're like a block away. To, it's just a lot. And that's certainly put a lot of experience under my belt really quickly, where I didn't really have to be there for 5, 10 years to kind of get a good mixture of a lot of these things. um but it's one of those careers that pulls a toll on you over some time. And I respect everybody that it's kind of puts up with that over many years. But for me, it was it was time to transition to the private side. And I'm glad that I did, because I always had that kind of that entrepreneur component within me, that hey, I want to do something in investigations, but at the same time I like having my own business and growing something and making some sort of changes in the industry. And so yeah, I was fortunate enough to kind of find a combination of both, where hey, I can start an investigation firm, but at the same time be entrepreneurial, and at the same time kind of make an impact, and all of those components just kind of fit in perfectly. And now, like I said, Strike National Investigations, we've been around for about 3 years. We work with a lot of major insurance companies, TPAs, large employers, well-known brands, law
Wow.
firms, nationwide. And we primarily niche in insurance defense, anything from personal auto, commercial, GL, workers' comp, property. I mean, whatever insurance type of claim that you can think of, we handle it, and we do the investigation component.
Wow.
So yeah, that's kind of a little bit in a nutshell. There's certainly a lot of things that go on to building a company. That's
Yeah,
that's
sure.
that's the thing that I could talk for like 4 hours on. But it's very rewarding nonetheless over time. It's kind of like your
Yeah.
little baby, and once you actually you're kind of growing it, you're holding it by the hand, and once you can actually let it go and it's riding the bike on its own, and you're watching that, like it's pretty rewarding to be able to see that.
I agree completely. Yeah, definitely a good analogy as well. Kind of
Yeah,
like what you're saying. I think that's accurate.
yeah. So
That's really cool. So tell me about like Strike. Okay, so not to go too much in details because like you're saying that would be 4 hours. But tell me like how you got started with this. And I understand you had this idea. You kind of saw like a space in the industry,
yeah.
so to speak. You're like, hey, there's opportunity here for another company. How did you go from that kind of concept phase to actually starting it? I mean, that's a big leap.
It all just kind of played out. At the time, I was working for a large carrier, and I was an SIU investigator for that carrier. And so when I became licensed as a private investigator in the state of California, somehow that got back to the ears of HR within the carrier.
Mhm.
And eventually, I found myself on a call with HR, and they said that could be a conflict of interest of
Wow.
me having a license but at the same time being an investigator, because the way that it kind of that they thought it was as if I was already operating as a business. And if you're operating as a business doing insurance defense, but you're also working for an insurance company, that could be a conflict of interest,
Yeah,
right?
I
There could
totally
be
understand that. Yeah.
some bleed between both. But yeah, no, at the time, I mean, I wasn't operating a business. It was just more of kind of just having the license, and in the state of California, when you get a PI license, you're required to choose a DBA for that license,
Uh-huh.
so it's like Chris Gutierrez doing business as investigative risk solutions, right? That's what it was initially. But that doesn't mean you're actually operating as a business. That just means it's a DBA that's attached to the license. That's it.
Right.
So anyway, that kind of it all the way it played out. I determined that it was better for me to just kind of go on my own and go quickly. I kind of from literally one afternoon, I walked over to the another part of our home, and we had just purchased a ranch in the high desert here in California. And I told my wife, like, hey, you know what, this is what's going on. And I think I just gotta resign or I might be let go because of this whole situation. And, she's like, well, you have your license. I'm like, yeah, I have a license. I have no clients, nothing at
Right.
all. She's like, well, like you got to start from somewhere. So I turned around, I sent my resignation effective immediately. And next day, that's it. I was just there sitting in my living room with a license, but with no clients and
Right.
no nothing there.
Right.
And so I feel like kind of being cornered in that situation where it's like, okay, I have to make it happen because I have to make it happen.
Right. You're
Like
going to
there's no
starve
other
it
way.
otherwise.
Like otherwise, like how are we gonna pay a mortgage? How are we gonna pay for
Right.
gas? How are we gonna pay for food? Like this has to happen. And so, for several days after that, all I was doing every single day was working on the operational structure of the company, on marketing plans, on business plans, without even having a single client. And I just knew that this was going to become important. And so putting, time on developing report templates and, developing our processes and everything without even having a single employee there. But it was more thinking like, okay, what happens when we have like 100 employees? How are we going to manage
Wow.
this? And
Wow.
that's kind of how I started thinking at the time. And just like the majority of business, I started reaching out to a bunch of people. I started sending a bunch of messages and everything, and it was all very salesy. Like, hey, like this is the business that I have, and I'd love to kind of do some work for you. And that turned into zero referrals. Like some people like didn't reply, and some other people was like, hey, we already have somebody that we use for like 10 years. So how do
Right.
you breach that gap? And I started coming across concepts like such as the power of power connecting, creating indispensability within clients and things like that. And so that kind of shift my approach to business, because now it wasn't selling you something. Now it's like, hey, I'm approach you and I'm going to add value in some sort of way without even asking you for a sell. I'm just going to find a way creatively to add value to what you're doing. And naturally, that's going to strengthen our relationship where naturally you're going to ask me to do business with you instead of me asking you. And so I kind of took that approach over several months, and that started working. Started kind
Wow.
of being able to elevate other people, being able to like help them land a job, being able to help them under certain situations that maybe they needed a favor, and I wouldn't ask for anything in return. Sure, I'll do this favor for you, right? Or hey, Chris, we need to find out like this information, and I came across your profile. Sure, I'll help you, and I'm not asking for anything in return, but it's creating that value within people. and
Right.
and it, and it, and it kind of goes back to kind of the a simple concept of sales, like when you go to Costco. You walk in and you go to different aisles and somebody's there giving you a piece of that product, and you try it and you're
Yeah.
like, oh, this is really good, let me
Right.
take a packet of that. And then you take a packet home and then you keep trying it and then you fall in
Mhm.
love with that product. Then you come back and next thing you know, you want to get the whole pallet of that. That same concept applies to the majority of other businesses, whether you're a professional services, whether you're whatever you are, a brokerage firm, is being able to add some sort of value. And you can't really get somewhere, or you can't really expect for somebody to take big risk and want to give you a shot when they've never
Sure.
had your product before. So you really need to have them experience your product with minimal risk on their end so they can fall in love with your product. And then once they fall in love with your product, then eventually the more and more they consume your product, the more that creates indispensability within their life. Now they feel like they cannot live or they cannot operate without your product. And when you're able to create that, then that's when you create that long-term relationship of 15, 20 years. And that's how you get that one client to not just write you a check once for that service, but come back and want to write you another check for
Right.
again, and write you
Wow.
another check and write you another check, right? And then you do that once, and then you say, okay, I already mastered this process of doing it once. Let me do it times 10, right? And then you just do 10 times that. And then once you're 10 times there, you're like, okay, let me do it 10 more times. And then
Keep
and then
scaling.
you're there, and
Yeah.
then you do it 10 more times. And next thing
Wow.
within 1 year, you create a $1 million revenue business from something that was zero in your bank account. And it all starts really just with the value, within the indispensability, with not selling anything. It's just really giving something to people that actually gives them tangible results, and they want to keep coming back for more, and you create that kind of recurring business over time.
Wow, that's awesome. I love that. I
Yeah.
love to hear that. You're very interesting to hear, inspirational as well. Like from a a small business standpoint, that's a really great way to grow. Is to actually just like you said, you did all this and you didn't expect anybody to give you anything back. You were just like, hey, here it is, and you know what? If it comes back to me, it comes back to me. And you kept doing that. I take it for a while, and it eventually did.
Yeah, yeah,
Wow.
and I think it's it's a process of kind of putting your ego aside and
Yeah.
realizing that you're smart in what you do, but you're not smart in everything, or you're not an expert in everything, right?
Right.
And if there's one thing that I know and that I know really well is that I don't know everything. And so part of growing is you need to get smart people on your team, right? And I use a lot of analogies, but it's kind of like the analogy of like being on a boat and kind of, or on a kayak, right? If you ever gone kayaking,
Yeah.
if that person with you there, that's kind of rowing with you, if they're not doing it in the same direction, that kayak's, they're going to start spinning different directions depending on the current, right? And you're not going to really go anywhere, and you're going to get really tired. You really need to start getting people on board that really kind of see that vision, that kind of have that passion, that see where you're going, and that share that same kind of ultimate goal, because that's the only way everybody's going to pull in the same direction. And then you find yourself not pulling alone. Now you find a lot of people pulling with you, and that's how you kind of escalate things quickly over time. And it's hard to find people like that, but that just kind of part of putting yourself out there. Put yourself out there. I never really found someone that said no to like connect on a call when I messaged them and I asked them. If you And I feel like that's really the gap between people that do things and people that don't. Right? It's just really asking. That's all it is, right? Like,
Huh.
send a message, right? Grab a message, be humble about it, and just send somebody a message and say, "Hey, I see everything that you're doing, and I really love all the content that you put out and everything that you're doing. I'll love to connect with you, like for 5 minutes to pick your brain. I'm doing some things, and I really, will love to kind of pick your brain for 5 minutes." The reality is that some of these people are going to be busy, so you're going to have to obviously accustom to their schedule. But the majority of them are going to say yes, and say, "Sure, hey, you know what? I'm tied up next week, but how about the following?" Yeah, absolutely. When works for you? Well, I'm open at 7 in the morning. Not a problem. I'll be there. Right. But then if you start making excuses, like I had a good mentor of mine, who's actually my business partner now, and he, when we initially, were connecting, I remember him sending me a message like at 6 in the morning. Hey, I'm available now for like 10 minutes before I jump on another call.
You're like, I'm not
And
awake.
I was in bed. I was in bed and I
Wow.
saw that and I jumped out of my bed and I
Oh,
gave him a
really?
call right there and then. Yes, I gave him a call because I knew the value that he could add to everything that I was doing. So why are you going to waste that opportunity? Right? Like, you're the
Wow.
one looking for that. Take advantage of it when it's actually there, right? Don't make yourself like, oh, I'm super busy. Oh, that doesn't fit my schedule. No, you're the one that's reaching out. Make it happen, right? Because this is probably
Right.
the only time you're going to be able to connect with this person, and be very grateful about their time, and be prepared with the questions that you're going to ask, right? Don't waste somebody's time. Like, be prepared and say, hey, like, I saw that you scaled your business from scratch to being it now. Like, what am I missing here? Like, that's something that I'm doing. Like, tell me not the successes, but tell me the difficulties that you came across, and how did
Right.
you overcome that? And if you were to do it again, how would you do it differently? Right?
Right.
Like, those are valuable questions that you're asking somebody that's actually scaled something, and that information is like valuable. I mean, you could read hundreds of books, and you're
Right.
probably not going to get the same quality of just sitting with somebody and just getting that information, right? So it's just really the value of just asking. Just get out there, just put your name out there, just reach out to people, just ask. The worst thing that can happen is they're going to say no. Hey, what?
Yeah.
Sorry, not interested. Okay, not a problem. You don't lose anything, right?
Right.
You're not gonna die. Like, you just reach out to more people, and that's it. And
Yeah.
people say yes, and then you just kind of soak that up and keep learning and just kind of keep growing over time.
Wow. I think a lot of people, myself included, at times, would be really shy or bashful, or I think the biggest thing as well would be just fearful of rejection.
Yeah,
Even though it's like you're saying, it's like, look, at the end of the day, all they can say is yes or no. there's no in between on that, and there a lot of people wouldn't do any of that, would not reach out whatsoever, and that includes trying to prospect as well to different clients,
yeah,
just so fearful of rejection,
yeah,
of like they're going to say no. You're like, so what?
yeah,
Somebody's going to say
yeah.
no, but I'm going to get somebody to say yes.
Yeah, yeah, and I think you said something really important there. That whoever's listening might have not caught to is fear of rejection, and fear of
Hmm.
rejection is actually not bad, but it's what are you fearing about regret, right? If you're fearing regret that somebody's not going to answer to you, well, that's something that an obstacle that you kind of have to get over. But I personally fear regret a lot, but the regret that I fear is not actually trying something. That's the regret that I fear, is not actually taking a shot or not actually, taking a swing of doing something, because then I know that eventually I'm gonna be sitting somewhere and I'm gonna be like, oh, man, what would have happened or what would have been if I would have tried this? That's what I fear a lot. And the more and more that I do things and the more and more that we grow our team, I become more fearful of regret. It's just like I don't want to regret anything. I don't want to like be, you know, uh, in a hospital bed or somewhere and be thinking, what would have had been if I just done this,
Right.
right? That's what I really fear a lot in life. I don't fear failure, I fear regret. And
Mm.
I think fearing regret, it's actually a good thing, when you can actually soak that in and make that be part of your life, because what that makes you is that makes you kind of fearless. That just makes you unstoppable in a way. That makes you like, I don't care what you think of me, and I don't care whether you're on board or not. Let's do it. And this is my train and I'm moving this direction. Feel free to jump on my train, but don't get in my way because the train's not going to stop. And so, and so I feel like that kind of builds you of that mentality, and you kind of have to have that mentality.
Sure.
This, you're a business owner, starting something from scratch it's painful, and it's draining, and it's not all, rainbows and
No.
sweets and victories. It's not all that. The victories and the rainbows, that's what the public see. The failures and the challenges and the pain, that's what's behind the stages. And there's more of the challenges and the pains than the victories.
Exactly.
And so you really have to be a tough skin. You got to really just kind of have that, a little bit of hood in you. That's what I talk like. You really just got to have it in you, and like, okay, let's roll. Like, where do we got to throw punches, and who's going to throw punches at me, and like be ready to take some,
Hmm.
and just kind of have that mentality. Because if you don't from the start and you just go in of, and that I think that's probably the big issue right now with a lot of like the new generation,
Hmm.
is that there's YouTube and there's social media and all that, and all that. It's great. It's creating a lot of entrepreneurs and a lot of millionaires.
Sure.
If remember, somebody shared a statistic where a decade ago, Forbes, 60% of the wealthiest people in the world were old money. Now 60% of the wealthiest people in the world is new money.
Mm.
And that's interesting, because that means that
Very
a lot of
interesting.
the
Yeah.
people that are being millionaires and billionaires, it's new money. It's people starting from scratch.
Huh.
And what's the difference? Well, the mindset, right? Kind of the putting yourself out there and surrounding yourself with mentors, and kind of getting on that trajectory. But I feel like what a lot of people get confused about is that they go on social media and they see somebody that maybe became a YouTuber a year ago, and now they're driving like a G-Wagon or a Lamborghini or something like
Yeah.
that, right?
Yeah.
First of all, they don't even know the car's registered to them, or they just rented it for the video.
Right.
But
Yes, a
let's
lot of
say,
them do.
yeah, but a lot of them, let's say they actually do own the car and it's them, right? That's great. That's their particular kind of business trajectory. Don't anticipate that you're going to start a business and in 2 weeks you're going to be a millionaire.
Mhm.
Like, it could it happen? It, maybe. It's never impossible.
Right.
But what's reality? Well, reality is that you're going to have to put some work in it, and it's going to be painful. And that's the part that a lot of people miss. And when it gets painful, like, they drop, and that's why
I
they don't
think that's kind
continue.
of like the problem with that, perhaps, is probably like the media and media from all different sources, and that's called like survivorship bias. So whenever
Yeah.
you see, like you're saying, like somebody that made a real big success, and a lot of it, as well, is that we see a lot of people that are younger, 22, 23 years old, and they're millions and millions of dollars, and they're doing all these crazy things. But
Yeah.
that's not the reality. The reality of the situation is entirely different. Most people who are entrepreneurs and are actually business owners and all these different things are much older. They're in their 50s. 45 to 50 years old is on the average when people start a business. It's not 22, it's not 19. But that's survivorship bias whenever we see that. And you're absolutely correct. People see these things. And whenever you do have a person that's 20, whatever, 22, 24 years old, and they've got, $20 million or more sometimes, that makes the news. That's everywhere. It rarely makes the news when some person that's 52 years old starts a business and is making 1.2 million. That's like no one cares. No one cares at all about that guy or anything else. So that never makes the news, and that's exactly what I'm talking about. Is that survivorship bias whenever we see these types of things. And you're absolutely correct about the hardships. Is there's a lot of risk, and you didn't mention one word, and that would be scary. It can be very, very terrifying
Yeah.
to venture out and to, the day you say I quit, and that resignation letter you wrote. I mean, that takes balls. It takes a lot of balls to do that.
It is
Honest,
scary. Yeah, it is
yeah.
scary. I think I might have, like, probably teared it up a little bit at that time. That's really scary.
Yeah,
Your entire everything about your life is dependent on this, right? And it's basically like saying, my only source of income, I'm pretty much cutting it.
exactly.
I'm cutting it, and we are throwing ourselves out there with no avenue of income,
Safety
but
net,
we're
no
just gonna,
nothing. Yeah,
no safety net, no nothing, and we're just gonna figure it out, right? That's heck scary. That's super scary.
exactly. Yeah,
And if tough guy would probably sit up here and be like, "Oh no, totally. I knew I was going to be successful." The reality is that no, like that's really scary. I was really scared at the time, and this is something that I would wake up feeling, that I would go to sleep feeling during the day. But if there's one thing that I learned in law enforcement, is that it's okay to feel scared. Don't let scare paralyze you,
hmm.
right? Like, you're human, so it's okay to be sensitive to these situations. That's okay to feel scared, right? You're walking into a building where there's a guy with a gun. It's okay to feel scared. That's fine. You're not a robot. You're human. But don't let that scare feeling paralyze you. You got to
Right.
turn on
Hmm.
that switch, and you got to really put your game face on, and you got to know what you need to do to come out alive, but also do what you need to do to take care of the situation. And that applies to business too. It's okay to feel scared, but don't let that scare feeling paralyze you, where you're there and you don't want to do anything. You're scared, but let that scary feeling, leverage it to actually push you forward, and make sure that you call as many people as you need to call in a day, right? I can't tell you, if I were to look at my phone records for that period, I was calling people every other minute, and I was online, and I was finding names of insurance companies, TPAs, anybody that I could find that would be a potential prospect, and I was picking up the phone and I was calling them. It, that's it. You just, and I mean, did anybody say yes? No, everybody said no. Um, but then you have to reassess. Okay, well, if I already called everybody and everybody's saying no, what is it that I'm doing wrong, or what am I
Hmm.
not doing that's causing them to tell me no? And then you pivot. And that's it. That's just kind of part of the game. But But I really feel like, all in all, I really feel that you can only push through those situations when you actually have like a passion for what you're doing, right? And you have a passion for that ultimate vision and that goal. Um, and now that I look back at it, and even, I connect with a lot of people too, and I give them some mentorship guidance, and I have my mentors too, and I learn from them as well. And that's really what it is, identifying kind of that passion, that purpose. Why are you doing what you're doing? Okay, sure, you want to start a business. Why? Right? And what is this going to satisfy? And if you're just doing it for the money, well, that's not going to go anywhere. Like,
Right.
did you have to do it for some other bigger reason? Why? And when you identify that, then when everything else, goes down the drain, then you're gonna grasp on that, on that why, and that's gonna allow you to kind of re-energize and go out and start pushing again. Um, so yeah, it's just anybody can do it. It's just really kind of the identification process of these things that sometimes takes a little bit longer for some people than others.
Yeah. No. Wow. No, you're absolutely right. That's really cool to just hear about all these different things with it all. But I definitely 100% agree with everything you said about, just, starting the business and getting everything going and how scary that can be. It can be a really big deal. And I wanted to add something else is that as well, is that I think
Sure.
a reason probably that you were successful, and myself included, I mirrored your situation a lot in the same type of scenario. But whereas you didn't have a backup. If you had, like, let's say, a wealthy family member or some other source of income, that you could rely upon, you probably wouldn't have pushed so hard. You probably wouldn't have done so much. It was kind of like a survival mode, whereas what kept you driving everything on was I have got to eat. I have got to put money on the table. I've got to pay my mortgage. If we don't produce income, we're going to lose everything. We're going to lose our mortgage. We're going to lose the whole bit. So
Yeah.
that's like survival. You had that in you. Obviously, you know what you wanted to make as well. You knew about the industry. You had a vision. You knew where you wanted it to go.
Yeah.
But that drive and that ambition can come from just flat out survival mode. Just like, look, I've got to do this or else I'm screwed. Things are
Flight
going to
or
get really
fight.
bad.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, yeah, either yeah, no, that's exactly right. And that's what it was. It's just that survivorship kicking in and saying, "Hey, well, we gotta eat," so this has to work out. Like, there has to be a way to make it work out.
Hmm.
Um and one of the phrases that I learned from, some of my mentors is, find a way to yes. Don't tell me no. Like, find
I
a way to yes. Right?
like
Like,
that.
sure, this hasn't been done before. I don't care. Let's find a way to yes. Like, how do we restructure this to get
Right.
to yes, right? Or tell
Like
me
that.
what I need to do to get to yes, right? Like, hey, Caleb, or hey, Chris, sure, thanks for calling, but you know what? We've been having a relationship with our broker for the last, 8 years, so we ain't looking to move somewhere else, right? Okay, no, I appreciate, the you taking my call, and take that in consideration. But, like, really, a lot of people just kind of end there. Oh, that's it. They told
Sure.
me no, right?
Yeah.
And that's not what it is. Is they took your call, and they actually took the time to tell you no. That, to
Oh.
me, that means there's an opportunity. Because if you really don't
There's a yes
want,
in there.
yeah, there's a yes in there, because you took my call, and you took the time to tell me no. And if you're taking the time to tell me no, then that means that there's a bit of hope or possibility that I can turn you to say yes. I just got to find a way to get to yes. When people really don't want to, they just don't answer your call. They just don't answer your email at all. You
Very
just
true.
get zero communication from them. But if they are taking your call and just to tell you no, then that no means that there's a possibility to turn into yes. That just means that they haven't really identified the value as to why they should switch over to you. And that's really what it is. So yeah, it's just a lot of different things in business. This obviously the whole growth of it. There's the whole operational component. Then you have employees, and it's HR, and then there's there's kind of growth and all this different stuff. But overall, it's fun. It's something that keeps you on your toes. There's no day that you're not kind of trying to solve something or trying to improve something, and I love it. I wouldn't change it for anything. I think it makes my life dynamic. And I don't get bored. There's always something, whether it's good or bad happening. There's always something happening,
Right.
and that's just part of the process. And so yeah.
Excellent. All right, great. Well, that's I really appreciate all this. I think you're giving out lots of good advice. Where do you see everything heading towards? So, like, where you are at now, are you just looking at expanding this company even more, or where do you see things going towards?
Yeah. There's obviously a lot of growth within the plans of Strike. When I started Strike, National Investigations from just a little tiny desk, and at home, uh, the whole concept of Strike was to be a premium quality national firm that not just anybody could afford, but if you wanted good quality results that nobody else could get, that's what Strike would be. And that has factored into the way that we do things. We don't. Um, we're also not super expensive where people don't cannot afford us because we work with a lot of insurance companies and TPAs, but we don't focus on really kind of being the cheapest out there. Is we
Right.
focus on being the highest quality out there, and giving you the best results. And so that's really what's still within our mission statement, and what's still within our vision is continue to be that, is continue to lead with quality and make a difference with tangible results, and then just grow over time. And now with the institute, the National Education Institute of Investigations, well, that's just kind of a way to complement everything to kind of, in a way, improve the way education's done within the investigations industry. And this is anything from insurance claims to criminal defense to financial crimes to workplace investigations. I mean, this is whole everything investigations,
Wow.
and just improving that, making sure that over the next several decades that the quality of investigators that are being produced, and that these people that are going for criminal justice degrees and administration of justice and all those, that they actually have an institution where they can actually learn quality skills that they can apply to their careers, and that will improve the industry. It's just it's best practices, methodology. It's
Wow.
yeah. So there's a lot of plans with that too. So yeah.
Is that your same concept, if you don't mind, like from earlier, like whenever you first started out, how you were like, hey, I've got to add value to everything. I need to add value to everything I'm doing. And I'm just going to kind of give it away until I get something back. And it's just going to come back to me. Is that your same concept with this as well?
Yeah, and I'm glad that you asked that. Yeah, that is my same concept. Is it's adding value. I think that when you lead with value forward, um, rather than just trying to get somebody's money, and
Right.
for example, let's say the institute, just get them, buy a course or something, that only goes a long way. That's only going to go so far out. So you really got to identify, do I want to be a finite player, or do I want to be an infinite player, right? Because the concept of finite versus infinite players is that finite players win today, but they don't last over time. And infinite players are okay with not winning today, but they do last over 15, 20 years. And
Wow.
so that's I always kind of go back to that concept with everything that I'm doing. Do I want to be a finite player? Do I want to be an infinite player? And I feel that that's important to identify early on, because that's gonna, in a way, affect your business plan. It's also going to affect your mission statement. It's going to affect your purpose, Why are we doing what we're doing? And what is the ultimate objective? Is the objective to just make some quick money and, disappear in the next 2 3 years, or is the objective to actually impact an industry, to actually provide valuable information, and to actually, build ourselves a reputation over time so that we can continue to be around 50 years from now? um and for me, um it's never been about the money. The money is an ancillary benefit that comes with building anything, right?
Sure.
But it's never been about the money, because I think that, money, at least in my beliefs, money's energy, and depending on the energy that you're kind of functioning in, then that's the frequency that's going to bring in that flow. And so I don't focus on the money. I focus on the value. What are we doing to add value to not only our instructors that are being part of, let's say, the institution, not to our students, but also to the industry overall?
Wow.
And once those all concepts kind of play together and they can communicate well and everything is operating smoothly and efficiently, the money is just kind of
Hmm.
an ancillary benefit that comes with it. And it won't come just to us. It's going to come to everybody. Like, everybody's
Right.
going to benefit from it. Um, and I feel like that's really kind of the formula to kind of grow something and kind of build a legacy rather than just make a quick buck. And that's really kind of what's in the plans, for the next several years. It's
Wow.
continue to build upon that legacy, continue to make an impact, and continue to pivot, with whatever the industry takes us. Whatever's happening right now, we don't know if another COVID's going to happen,
Sure.
3 years from now, right? Like, nobody anticipated those things. So
Very
those
true.
those are those are I think the things that, as kind of businesses, like, you got to stay on your toes. You got to start anticipating what things are going to happen and start kind of preparing. And when those things happen, maybe your goal was to go to mountain A, but now that this happened, we're going to have to go to mountain B to circle around and go to A. And that's okay.
Like that.
You can
Yeah.
pivot, as long as you are aware that you're gonna have to pivot, and then just get to where you need to be. So, yeah, that's kind of in a nutshell, with a little bit of what's going on.
I like it. I like your nutshell. It's mixed with string theory, but I definitely like
Yeah,
that. I like
yeah,
how you think of things. It's all intertwined. Like your analogy of energy. I like that.
yeah,
It's a good way to think about things.
yeah, yeah,
It's really
yeah.
cool.
Awesome, cool. Yeah, well, this
Chris,
was
I want to have
this
you on
was great.
again, though. I mean, if you don't mind, someday in the future, whenever I know you're busy, but maybe we do it in a month or 2 months, whenever you're
Yeah,
busy again, because I think we could go on. We could do a lot longer time
yeah,
frame. Maybe we'll have a different subject we talk about next time. But
totally.
you're really interesting to talk to, and a lot of fun.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Likewise here, I was, really happy to be part of the show. And I appreciate, obviously, the opportunity. I was talking about, like, the benefit of just reaching out, right? And that's really how
Yeah,
this became to be.
exactly.
You reached out, and had you not done that, then you just never get anywhere. So it's really that same concept. So
Very true.
no, I appreciate you reaching out. This was good. I really loved kind of being part of the show, and hopefully, this is some benefit to the audience. And yeah,
Yeah.
looking forward to circling back, sometime here in the future.
Okay. Excellent. All right. You have a great day.
Awesome.
Okay, Chris.
Yeah, you too, Caleb. We'll be in touch.
Thanks.
All right, take care. Bye.
You too.